so it's not for kids.
Tom, I think it's time we shared our secret, our deep secret with the listeners.
Okay.
We're actually K-pop demon hunters who have been tasked with ridding the world of evil.
So our podcast is what is keeping the Han Moon intact or whatever?
Well, here's the deal. They trained us to sing and be attractive, but when neither of those things came to fruition, they crunched the numbers, and the second most impactful thing that we could do with our voices was a very niche podcast about board games.
Okay, that is making a ton of sense. Yeah. Also, speak for yourself, because I can sing. You know, they definitely boosted my able to sing stats, but they like devalued my looking good stats. So
it's like a slider.
Yeah, and you got like the other one a little bit, right? Which is really ironic because out of the two of us, you're the only one with a recorded singing voice.
That's true. If we were in like a 5-person boy band from the 90s, who would you be? Like in sync or something?
I'd be the ugly one. Isn't there always an ugly one? Like you got to have like some guy. I don't think so.
They're generally all attractive. There's like a more down to earth looking one, but like I wouldn't say there's anybody ugly in NSYNC.
Okay, well give me the stereotypical like lineup of boy band, because I don't know that I could define the things that differentiate them.
Okay. You've got America's Sweetheart, aka the main one.
Not me, that's for sure.
The bad guy. I'm the bad guy. Like Billie Eilish. Doesn't follow the rules. Dances in slightly a different direction.
Okay, he goes left, everyone's going right.
You've got the one that's like more like gentle, empathetic, and like the emotional one, you know?
Okay. It's always looking wistfully to the right or left.
The dancer / rapper / both.
I'm liking that one so far.
You have the one that's secretly a reptilian. Like the one that like you're like not sure how they made it into the group, you know? Like maybe they won a lottery. If you look at all the items that are required, right? They can sing, they can dance, they look good, but there's something that like they just don't go with the rest of the band. That's the 5th one.
Well, I mean, if the shoe fits, like, what else can I say? I maybe like they're always like the one in the band because like they're the only one that has actually had like a down to earth, like at some point he worked retail, so he's like the only guy that can like deliver down to earth lyrics for them.
Maybe they do all the work. The other ones bring the charm, but they're the one that's like hustling. Like they go to pick up like Gatorade for everyone else.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Archetypes of boy bands.
This is too much. I'm gonna go crazy.
Everything I just said is pretty wrong. Okay, the heartthrob, that's what they call the main one. Right. The bad boy, rebellious and edgy. The cute one, sweet. Okay, so far I'm 3 for 3. Uh-huh. The smart one. Okay, they're calling the last two the smart one and the funny one. I think the funny one is the reptilian. Maybe it's because I don't have that same sense of humor, but I don't consider the funny one actually funny.
I feel like being like the heartthrob is like what everyone, it's like being like the Jim Halpert of The Office. Like, you know, I'm not a Jim Halpert. Yeah. If you cast me in The Office, like, I think I'm probably Oscar, and I've said this many times because I'm literally like the actually guy.
True. You wish you were Jim, but you're actually Oscar.
Yeah. What I imagine myself as, Jim Halpert. What I actually am, Oscar. Like,
we always do like rankings and tier lists, but what we should really do is just label different various things as members of a pop group. So it can be like, all right, Uwe's games. Which one is the heartthrob? Or even The Office. Okay. Jim Halpert is the heartthrob.
Yeah.
Who's the bad boy? Creed?
Ryan. Obviously.
Ryan. Yeah, Ryan's the bad boy. Okay, so we got Jim, Ryan. Who's the emotional one?
Dwight?
No. Dwight is emotionless. That's his whole thing.
Oh, then Andy. Like, we can only include the male
Andy.
Part of the cast,
Andy.
Right? Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Well, then smart one can be Dwight, maybe, even though in the actual show he's not that smart. Oscar. Oh, you're right. Well, then I feel bad that Dwight is not in the boy band. But I guess the funny one could go to either Stanley or Kevin.
Okay, but here's the interesting thing, because they call it the funny one, and when I'm calling it the psyop, right? The reptilian one. I think Dwight that could
there's always like an
role.
Odd man out, like in a boy band. There's always like a guy who's just kind of there.
Like, I don't understand. Yeah,
I see, and that would be Dwight in that case. I see. Okay,
there it is.
I feel like the audience can even just like fill that in for themselves. This is the most millennial we've ever been on this show, and like I'm kind of feeling embarrassed. But it's also like so true. I think we nailed it first try.
Do you remember Pogs?
See, here's the problem is like when you're the one who's like trolling and keeping the opening going and going, like I can't come in with the intro because you're the intro man.
That's true. All right, let's do it. Okay. Let's take you out of this hell.
Yeah, get me out of here.
But first, did you know that Pogs was based on passion or no? Okay. Welcome to Shelf Stable.
Yeah, it was. I do know about that.
No, I know. No, it's like I'm doing the Tame Impala joke because like everybody always says that fact about Pogs and it drives me crazy. Anyway, welcome to Shelf Stable, a podcast celebrating.
All right, continue. I feel like
do you want to do this show?
No one I know even knows like the word Pog in the first place, let alone that it comes from a Pog tournament.
Literally every millennial knows what Pog is.
That's
the whole bit. That's why I said, do you remember Pogs? I was like joking about how this is the most millennial show we've ever done.
See, you're coming in here like
nobody knows Pog.
I do actually hang out with people in real life that don't go on the internet.
Well, that's your fault. Welcome to Shelf Stable, a podcast celebrating Pog that have stood the test of time. I'm your host, Kenny Katayama.
And I'm your passion fruit orange guava, Tom Bowers. Today, our feature topic is what makes games funny? Comedy in my board games? I don't think so.
As you can tell by our opening, we are perfectly qualified to talk about this.
Finally, we can actually discuss something that we're highly qualified to say, which is comedy. Before we get into that, though, we're just going to talk about stuff we've been playing recently.
Tom, I got to play Igloo. That's an Igloo Pop from 2003, designed by Heinz, Meister, and Klaus, Zoch, published by Rio Grande in the US.
Rio Grande.
Igloo Pop is a children's game that we played as a group of 5 or 6 grown adults, and we had a really fun time with it. At least some of us. Some of us at the table thought it was the dumbest thing ever. I had a good time with it, and I feel like a majority of the folks at the table had a fun time. Have you heard of this one, Tom?
No, I know what Iggy Pop is vaguely.
So it's not really related to Iggy Pop, but in Igloo Pop, first off, it starts with this great little story at the beginning of the rule book. I always love when games have like a super nonsensical children's story at the beginning. I'm not being facetious. I legitimately love it.
Yeah, when it's nonsense, it's great. When it's like trying to be serious, it's like, come on.
When it's about like a fantasy universe, I do not care.
Right.
But in this one, it's like there was a giant and the giant was looking for some fish. And so it picked up a bunch of igloos and shook them around to hear if they had fish. But when the giant opened the igloo, it turns out they were tiny little humans, and the humans like jumped out and were scared and ran away. But then they played with him and then they had a fun day. And I was like, this is great. I'm already loving this. The way the game works, it'll sound familiar now that you know the story. You grab an igloo, this is real time, and you shake it next to your ear. And you try to figure out how many beads are inside of the igloo, which now we canonically know you're just shaking a bunch of small humans inside of an igloo as hard as you can to count them. And then you place a bid functionally on like how many you think is in that igloo. You put it on a specific number, and then you go to the next one. You can place more bids if you go through them quickly, but then you don't really hear them well. You know, you probably get it wrong. If you get it wrong, you lose a guess, and you have a limited number of guesses throughout the game. If you get it right, you get your guess back and you get points. And the more precise it is, the more points you get. I very much enjoyed this, and I thought going into it, it would be fun, but it'd be a one and done. I kind of want to play this again, and I was very surprised by that. It's just a very different skill from anything that I usually do in board gaming, but at the same time, it still feels very board gamey. I do feel like as the game progresses, you're more and more prone to like generating tinnitus because assuming you're competitive, right?
Yeah.
Because people are getting more and more excited and energetic, so they're talking louder. So now you're shaking the thing closer to your ear and you're shaking it like harder. So you have all these like beads literally right next to your, what's the snail that's in your ear?
Your cochlea?
Yeah, right next to your cochlea. And I just assume that can't be good for your ears. But then again, it's probably still better than whatever volume you have music in your car or listening to our dumb voices right now. I think that this game could benefit from having a like adult mode that's like really sexy. No, what I mean is like that has like more mechanisms. But honestly, even at its like in its current version, I think it was really fun and I want to play it again. So I was pleasantly surprised by Igloo Pop.
Yeah, I have to try this one out because it does have like some of those elements that I'm not a huge fan of, but the fact that it is a kid's game kind of makes me think like actually it probably works out pretty well.
Igloo Pop, 2003.
Well, speaking of fantasy ramblings at the beginning of a rule book that you don't care for, I recently got to play Aeon's End from 2016. Designed by Jenny Iglesias, Nick Little, Kevin Riley, and I'm probably slightly mispronouncing some of those names. Published by Indie Boarding Cards. Aeon's End, we already talked about this because you played it, and you were largely not a fan. I, going into this, was kind of worried about the worst because I was like, I know Kenny kind of hated this low key. I was going to be playing it with Taylor, who is going on a journey to play the top 100. This is currently in the top 100. And I know that she has largely not enjoyed the titles in that list. So I was like, this is potentially going to be a slog where everyone is not feeling it.
You also played 4-player, and you also don't like pure deck builders.
Yep, that was the other thing. Not typically a deck builder fan by default. Yep, full table, the works, right? So I was like, this might be ass. And then actually playing it, I had quite a good time. It was really fascinating to me why that would be the case, because I don't feel like you and I don't diverge a ton. And then on top of that, Taylor had a good time, which is rare, number one, but also number two, I know that your taste alignment is more closely correlated than the alignment between yourself and myself, right? So it's like, what's going on here? Well, when we talked about it after the fact, you admitted to having played it online. That seems to have been a critical factor in this, as far as I can tell, because at least in person around the table, like it felt like there was never really a dull moment. Yes, it could sometimes take like 8 years before it became your turn again because of the way that turn order is determined by a deck of cards, the same way it is in Cosmic Frog, for example, which is an interesting way to do a cooperative game like this because you can't like guarantee that turn order where like, you know, I know that Taylor can set up an epic turn for me to take advantage of. We don't get those guarantees. So we just have to kind of make the most of the moment when our number comes up. And I actually found that one of the more interesting things. I almost kind of wish for that type of mechanism for a game like Pandemic. Because I think Pandemic can become so predictable to as be boring at a certain level because of the turn order function. And if it had that randomness, like, yes, it's a little bit fiddly, it's a little more admin, but I feel like it pays dividends because of that unpredictability. It definitely adds challenge. So anyway, new challenge mode for Pandemic just dropped right here on the podcast. I doubt I'm the first person to come up with that concept. But I found it endearing despite its busyness. Yeah, I don't know. I was pretty surprised by this overall. You mentioned like the lack of actual shuffling in the deck building as it is was like a huge AP factor potentially. In practice, it was like pretty obvious what you do with sorting your discard, I should say, and that there really wasn't too many decision points to even really be made. Like you're angle fishing really, which I could see potentially having to happen maybe on like more difficult enemies, but it never really felt like it came up, at least for me. Each of us kind of ended up sort of falling into an important role, almost like how you would in a game like Overwatch or whatever, where someone's DPS, someone's tank, someone's healer. In our case, it worked out to very slim margins where we only barely survived and won. And I do think that was like a huge factor in our enjoyment of this session. But if we had known, I think earlier that these roles were going to kind of develop, and if we had known how the game plays, we could have made more informed choices about the characters that we chose for our party, as it were, before we set out. And then I think if we fit into those roles better, it could have worked like really well. Knowing how low my expectations were, I was like, this is a pretty good time. I don't know what Kenny's on.
I'm glad you liked it.
I think it mostly speaks to the difference of playing something like this online versus in person, because I do think that in-person camaraderie is a big factor in the texture of this game. Yeah, the fact that there wasn't physical communication between the two players, like, I guess it deserves another play from me with that context. Aeon's End from 2016. While you were playing Aeon's End, I was getting my ass handed to me in Seas of Strife from 2017. Designed by Mark Major and published by Rio Grande. I'm on that Rio Grande kick right now.
I guess, Seas of Strife is a trick-taking game. Like an actual trick-taking game, not like a Tom trick-taking game. And the fun, interesting thing, the hook about Seas of Strife is you are trying not to get tricks, but there are like maybe 12 suits, and each suit only has like 5 or 6 cards in it. So you're breaking color quite a bit. And the way the breaking color works is very different from other trick-taking games. Once you break color, you can follow any of the colors that are out there, but you must follow those colors. So somebody plays blue, and then you don't have blue, so you play green. The third player can't play yellow because they don't have blue. They have to play green if they have the green. All the colors are considered when you're looking at the board. If there are multiple colors out there, it's not the color that is the original lead that necessarily wins, quote unquote, the trick. It's the color that's most present. So I play a blue, you play a yellow, the third player plays a yellow, the fourth player plays a yellow. Even though I led with blue, I wouldn't win it. Yellow would win it. And that's actually good. You don't want to win tricks in this game. But there's an interesting dynamic where you have a lot of agency in how you affect the other players around you. And more than any other trick-taking game I've played, you really, really want to go last and you don't want to lead the trick. And what we experienced was a game where I would continuously make very bad decisions and continue to lead tricks. And then everybody would laugh at me. And then I would be like, okay, this is the one where I get out of this hellhole that I'm in. And then I would play a card, and it was a really good card. And it was looking like I was winning. And then the third card just absolutely upsets all that. And then the fourth card, everybody's snickering, and they're going, oh no, Kenny, I'm so sorry. You end the game when somebody has taken 15 total tricks. I took 7 tricks the first round. Just for perspective, typically you take like 1 to 3 tricks in a round. I took 7 tricks, and then I was like, I'm going to do better this round. And I took 8 tricks the second round, and the game was over. And then the person who taught the game was like, I've never played a game of this that lasted 2 rounds. So I was like, this must have been a fluke, I'm still learning it. I did some things clearly badly, but I feel like I've understood. So we played a second game immediately after, because I was like, everybody's like, are you sure? Are you really bad at this? And I was like, no, I'm enjoying this. I got 4 tricks the first round. I was okay with that. I'm like, things are looking up. That's half of what I got last time. And then I got 7 tricks the second round and 9 tricks the last round. So I ended the game with like a surplus of 5 tricks, and they were like, Kenny, you could have stopped at 15. I don't think I've ever been this bad at a game in my life. I'm not exaggerating. And I know that it was me. Like, I do not think it was just an unlucky hands. You don't get that many unlucky hands. There's something that I fundamentally still don't understand about this game, but that fascinates me. And I was laughing the whole time, even though, I was laughing at myself. I enjoyed it quite a bit. It is super mean. I think it is maybe the meanest trick-taking game that I've ever played. But maybe that's just because I was getting bullied the whole time. I don't know. But like I played Schadenfreude. We talked about Schadenfreude recently. I really enjoyed Schadenfreude, but this is like Schadenfreude 3.0. Like we skipped a version. Not only do you have more control over how you mess with people, but like the whole game is about messing with people in various ways. It's been a long time since I've played a game where I've simultaneously enjoyed it so much and also been so bad at it. Highly recommend checking this one out. It's very rare that we like recommend people go and seek out a game, but like I was really, really impressed with this one.
Yeah, I'm definitely curious to try it out myself. It's funny because I was just reading Reiner Knizia's like encyclopedic book about dice games. And I think one of the things he said in there was like, it's really fun to invert the winning mechanism of any of these games and make it about like basically doing the opposite. Like instead of rolling high, you need to roll low. And it's interesting to see that applied to trick taking, where it's just like, actually don't win the trick, and how that just fucks with you, you know?
That was Seas of Strife.
Speaking of being in a sea of strife, that's how I felt while I was playing this next game. Not really, like actually quite the opposite. More like Sea of Winning, Project L from 2020. This is designed by Michal, I think, John Soukal, Adam Spanel. Apologies in advance to you designers out there who made this really great game. Published by Boardcubator. Project L. It's from 2020, so I think it only recently became stable.
That's true.
Yeah, recently exonerated into the stability archive. That's what we're calling it. I'll take no questions. Project L is a really neat Tetronimo game. I don't know how to describe it. Tetramino? Tetris. The pieces look like Tetris, and they also look like something you shouldn't eat, but you really want to. Don't they look like those little pieces of gum that were always in like vending machines?
Pez?
No, they don't look like Pez.
Like the chiclets?
Chiclets, yeah, they look like fucking chiclets. And you're trying to fit them on these tactile puzzles and just, fill up the puzzles. And when you fill up the puzzle, you either get more pieces or points or both. It shares some DNA with Splendor, but I think the decision-making is very much more interesting than Splendor. I'm sure you would agree. I have been very successful at this game historically, so that is my challenge that I'm issuing to anybody that wants to play Project L with me. See if you can take me down. This game's a lot of fun, and I don't even know if I'm doing it really good justice. The best thing about it, I guess, is that there is this mechanism of action selection. Most of the actions are pretty standard, right? You can take a piece, you can upgrade it, you can put a piece on your board, you can take a new puzzle to try and start solving it. But then you get this special master action. And the master action, it lets you put one piece on every single one of the puzzles that you are currently working on, right? That means that you're incentivized to maximize your turns such that you are taking one of these master actions every time and putting 4 pieces on 4 puzzles. Now, that isn't strictly speaking possible every single turn because you only get 3 actions. So even if you spent your entire first turn just trying to take puzzles, you wouldn't have any actions left to do master, and you wouldn't even have enough pieces. So you're constantly in a tug of war, and you are racing against the clock, which is the other players who are rushing to end the game with more points than you by clearing out the more complex puzzle stack. This game just kind of has it all as like a nice middleweight game. I wouldn't exactly call it a filler because it's a little more complicated than that, but it plays so quickly that it almost could be. It just tickles the brain of any person that enjoys spatial puzzles, which I very much do.
I really enjoy this game. This is one that I also own. I don't think it's a super deep game. That being said, I think it's got more of that brain fizz, as Helena would say. Like the fact that there's that waboom action, which is what we call it, which increases the efficiency of your turn, really takes this game to the next level. Other than that, it's an efficiency puzzle. But that one rule makes it super interesting to play. I'm a big fan.
Okay, so 2 thumbs way up, essentially, for Project L. That's what we're trying to say.
100 games to play before you die.
Okay, it's time for the part of the show where we talk about the 100 games that you need to play before you kick the bucket, before you shed your mortal coil, before you pass away from this earth and go up into the sky. That is game number 46 on this list, Under Falling Skies from 2020. Apparently, that's a reprint year. It was originally from 2019.
It's like an official print. Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about it.
Okay, we'll get into the details here. Designed by Tomáš Uhlíř, Czech Games Edition. Kenny, why is Under Falling Skies on this list?
Under Falling Skies is on it for a number of reasons. The biggest, most prominent one is that this is a solo-only game. Originally, when we were working on this list, I kind of had like a few of the games that are still on the list as holding a candle to the solo experience. And my argument was, you don't really need to have a solo exclusive game on here. But then I played Under Falling Skies and I was kind of like, am I wrong about this? The same way that like dual games, you know, like 2-player push and pull games create a very specific experience and are tailored to that. I think that games like Under Falling Skies or Final Girl or even like completely different genres like 1,000-Year-Old Vampire, they're designed with that perspective in mind and allow themselves certain flexibilities that you wouldn't necessarily see. For example, in Under Falling Skies, you really benefit from putting as much thought as you can into each one of your actions because they're pretty sparse. But that would be really annoying if you were playing even with one other person. And so the game is kind of like, that's totally fine. You take as much time as you need, just as a simple example. There's other things too. At its core, it's a dice allocation game, kind of like Space Invaders, where you have these ships coming down and you're trying to allocate the dice to different positions to fight the enemy ships, as well as to power up certain abilities or build up your suite, your arsenal of things that you can do. But where you place the dice also affects how quickly the ships fall down, and if they ever hit you, you lose, basically. There's something really kind of therapeutic to playing a solo dedicated game, even when it has kind of a tenseness to it, like this or like Final Girl. There's also this interesting aspect of you meditating on what went into the game as you're also playing it. It's almost like you're having a conversation with the designer as opposed to what typically happens, which is a conversation with the other people around the table. Mm-hmm. I equate it to reading to a certain extent. I think that folks, including myself, can be dismissive of this experience, especially if they haven't really leaned into it. And that's why I decided Under Falling Skies should be on here. One of the other reasons this is on is because Under Falling Skies is a reprint of sorts. It's actually a publishing of a print and play game that somebody made for a one-off competition. This is not super common, but when it happens, it's really awesome. Anytime there's a fan-made version of something, kind of like the My Little Scythe, or there's just a solo project that gets picked up and published with a larger publisher, I think those are really awesome things that happen in the board gaming space. And they allow for a lot of more like creative experience oftentimes because they're not tied to a particular objective, right? I'm not saying every publisher and every designer focuses on making whatever's commercially successful, but oftentimes larger publishing companies have a focus on what's going to sell. And you can almost guarantee with a print and play or a self-published game that the only thing that was the goal is to make something that the person was proud of and that they enjoyed. And so sometimes you see some very different takes and some personal ones, like a solo-only board game, right? Those aren't super marketable, but...
I have never thought to equate it to reading, but that pretty much is exactly what it is. It's like something that creates a narrative, like that you are participating in creating a narrative for yourself and then just sort of experiencing that firsthand. So it's like you're writing a book that you are reading at the same time, in a way.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
That you co-authored, I suppose, with the original designer.
Yeah. Under Falling Skies, either the original print and play or this updated version, definitely worth checking out. The updated version has a whole campaign, so I think it has more replayability.
A lot of swag factor, too.
Oh, right,
I know.
Tom.
Okay, enough yapping and bullshit. Whatever the fuck just happened. It's been like literally multiple days since I last said the last word that you heard on this podcast. But now we're getting into the real meat and potatoes, the real how the sausage is made part of the podcast, the part of the episode that people come back for week after week in order to listen to us yap about. And that's the main topic. This week's main topic: what is funny?
What is funny?
How to be funny in board game.
I think that the game of Resistance, where we played with our good friends, John, where his nose whistled when we were closing our eyes. And then immediately after, John's partner was like, John's nose whistled. He's definitely one of the spies. And just the disaster and preceding consequences of John and the other spy having to like justify that they weren't spies just because John's nose whistled, but it actually being true. That was like a really comical moment for me.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out like why that was funny and why some things that are meant to be funny sometimes end up not being funny, sometimes end up being funny.
So I actually have given this a little bit of thought, believe it or not.
Nice. Nice.
There was something that came up for me recently. Oh, yes. Helena had the idea of running an open mic party, and it got me kind of pondering like what being a comedian looks like. I could maybe do a good impression of a comedian, but I don't actually know. There must be like some actual theory to it, right? Because people talk about comedians as if they're like geniuses, and I imagine they are, right? They're not just winging it up there. So there was a video that talks about funniness, like what makes things funny. And obviously the foundational concept is that there's an expectation that your brain has, right? There's some sort of logical proceeding to the story that you're hearing. And then that logic is subverted. The surprise is what makes us laugh. And it's kind of like the same like psychosomatic response you have almost to like a jump scare in a funny way, where it's like the jump scare is something unexpected, but you don't know what to make of it. And so like, you're frightened. I feel like it's just like a simple inversion almost, where it's like,
that's interesting.
The punchline is like something unexpected, but you knew it was coming in a way, like you knew what to make of it from the, you know what I mean? Like your brain almost works backwards in real time.
Like you don't know what's coming, but you know something's coming, and when it hits, you think it's clever, and so the whole thing results in yuck, yuck, yuck.
Yuck, yuck, yuck.
It's interesting that you mentioned jump scares. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the subversion moment for you guys with the
game of Resistance.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I don't know why I was going to say werewolf almost, but yeah, with the game of Resistance, the subversion moment happened where the expectation is that everyone is silent and their eyes shut, and we get the game going. Like there's no metagaming in that period of the game.
Yeah. Well, the first funny part was the whistle,
right? And so I think that's the other layer of funniness that's going on. And I think this is another way in which things are supposed to be funny according to scientists or something, which is that like things are funny that make us, I think, like socially react. It's kind of like, I think the reason farts are funny is like we're just sort of engineered as a species to like laugh it off, because it's like, like it would be awkward otherwise, basically. So it's like it's a way to survive the embarrassing interaction of farting and like, stuff like that. And so like there's body humor there technically with the nose fart, if you will.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Well, then the third aspect too is like the subversion of subversion, because in that scenario, as a joke, we were like, surely they are a spy because their nose whistled. And, that was a bit in and of itself, but it ended up being true. And so that made it all the funnier, especially when they were trying to get on the defensive and say like, come on, folks, like, just because my nose whistled doesn't mean I'm a spy. And the whole time they are a spy. So.
Yeah, exactly. Because like there's no reason to necessarily believe them, but it's like at the same time you have like almost nothing else to go on, and so it just becomes a meme, right? And then the fact that it ends up bearing that truth is just like it all falls into place. So talking about subversion as well, right, as the primary driver of making things funny, I think that's why Cards Against Humanity, the bit of the elephant in the room, I'm just going to jump into it and say it right now.
Yeah, let's jump into it.
I think that's like the reason it probably ends up being so unfunny as an overall experience. Like,
well, it's interesting because it can be funny, but on such a shallow level, right? I'm not going to pretend that it's never funny. There are definitely folks who are like haters. I think it's problematic, and that's a separate conversation. But
sure, yeah.
There can be funny moments, especially when things are kind of like juxtaposed in a way that's a bit more clever than usual.
I mean, it just doesn't do anything to subvert its own paradigm in a sense. Like every time a black card comes out, or sorry, is the black cards the one that the Tsar has? No, it's the white cards, right? I don't fucking know. It's been so long. The black cards come out and everyone plays like a white card to fill in the blanks. And it's just like, that's like the thrust of the proceeding. And so there's no subversion. Like there's never going to be someone who throws in a rubber chicken, into a game of like Cards Against Humanity. And if they did, that would probably instantly be funnier than throwing in a white card into the middle of the pile, because it's like, yeah, that procedure is so samey and so repetitive.
Yeah, it feels like a form of humor that doesn't provide any sort of agency from the player, which I think is a factor, right? And then also is just something that we visited so much that as an adult, it becomes less of a thing. Yeah. There's a reason that we don't continue to do Mad Libs when we're in our 20s. But like Mad Libs were like the funniest thing ever as a kid. And I think it's the same reason that Cards Against Humanity, as you get more into games that are for groups, like party games and things like that, it starts to lose a bit of its luster when you explore other things that allow for that.
Right. For what it's worth, I think Mad Libs can, in a way, be gamified into a superior format. I think it's, in an interesting way, almost the starting point for like improvisational storytelling as a group storytelling, right? So, and there's definitely like a lot of funniness that can come about, at least in a group that is trying to be funny, when like a game kind of instructs you to create a shared narrative, but there's at least one person who's always trying to like kind of mess things up or something like that, right?
It's interesting because I make a distinction between Mad Libs, where the prompt and you're filling it out, versus Mad Libs, where you're asked to have things to fill in without context, and then it comes out to be so absurd. Right. For some reason, the first one can still be funny to me, whereas the second one has kind of like, that was funny when I was a kid. The first one is more along the lines of a lot of party games we like, you and I, Tom, whereas the second one is more along the lines of Cards Against Humanity.
I think there's like intentionality to it as well. We kind of have talked about this with Cards Against Humanity before, where it just like, there's no agency really in I should say there's like, the agency is very limited from what it could be. And it kind of stifles the creativity of yourself and your friends.
Yeah, I agree.
Which is in a way like kind of, I think, why it ends up getting such a bad rap among gamers, is because like, it makes it feel as if your friends don't know how to be funny, when it's like they probably do. It just is like they don't know of better games, basically, that like create funniness procedurally. Generated comedy.
The roguelike of ha-has.
The Teehee maxing roguelike that'll give Dark Souls, it's the Dark Souls of comedy or something.
I love the idea of like a Twitch streamer that's like, all right, let's try to run this. We're going to put this part of the bit with this part. Ha 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 ha. All right, we're going to try to do this.
Yeah.
So this beginning punchline gets a multiplier of 5. I mean, that's pretty much what Cards Against Humanity is, right? Like,
yeah.
We need just like a more elaborate version of Cards Against Humanity, it sounds like.
I don't want to just see Pac-Man's come. I want to know how he came at all. Like, where's he hiding that dick? That's all I was going to say.
I love that Pac-Man's come has become a stand-in for Cards Against Humanity. Like that card in particular.
Yeah, what do you think it is?
Like Pac-Man's come is like the Pikachu of Cards Against Humanity. Like they should just put it on the cover of the box, really.
Do you think the reason that it's like found success as its own standalone meme is because like you know, when you actually start to think about it, you're just like, where did anyone... Oh, because it's not that. It's like Pac-Man guzzling cum. So it's just like, what like person sat down trying to play Pac-Man and they were like, dude, what if all these pellets were cum? Do you think that's what happened?
No, the card reeks of like, oh shit, we gotta make a 120th card, but I've run out of jokes. Quick. And there was like an arcade machine on the side. They were like, Pac-Man's poop? No, it doesn't work.
No, it's like the classic like trope where like they look and it's just like Pac-Man, and then they like look over at something else. Someone's like guzzling, and they're like guzzling, and then they like look at something else. They look at someone jacking off, and they're just like, come, like, you know.
Yeah. Quick. Things around the room.
I love the world that they live in, though. There's like a Pac-Man arcade, then on their left, someone's just like slurping down a milkshake, and then someone else is just jacking off. It's like, okay.
And then we wonder why people said that the Cards Against Humanity offices had a hostile workplace environment.
It's like, that's exactly what it was.
So in between like games that are designed to make jokes and games that just happen to be funny, there's kind of this middle area of games that are generally just games, but have funny references or bits. I'm thinking of like Munchkin, for example, or even a game like Smash Up. How do you feel about that kind of humor? Does that make you bust a gut?
It's never something. So it's like referential humor, right? It's like the Family Guy of like board
it's
game
usually
comedy.
Referential, yeah.
Yeah. There's not usually like a lot of depth going into it, and at the same time it doesn't usually offend. I think it can come across as so corny as to be obnoxious almost, but like typically like I'm going to be pretty forgiving, I think. Like it sort of depends on what it is that they're choosing to reference as well, right?
I think if it's something really esoteric, it can pop off, but it just typically isn't, I feel like. Because they got to like play to the most common denominator. So it's going to be like a Lord of the Rings reference.
Yeah.
You know, like you shall not pass into the bathroom or whatever. Damn, I should write for...
You shall not pass a kidney stone or some shit. Like, yeah.
I take it back. This is hilarious.
That was good. Write it down. TM.
I don't mind this.
Right.
It's definitely not like, oh, I played this game. It was so funny.
It's also pretty funny when like something is totally a reference to something that is like from like way before I was born, and like I just don't even know it or recognize it. You end up playing it with someone who's like a bit older, and they're just like, oh my God, like it's like that movie. And you're like, what movie? Like, you know, so there's always like that opportunity to learn a bit of trivia or history or whatnot. So I suppose there's that to it. Intrinsically, it's not exactly a funny so much as like it creates like a handhold for your brain.
Yeah, I agree. Let's go into like what truly gets us, you know,
juiced,
yeah.
What gets us guzzling, if you will.
Guzzling our funny bone. The first one that comes to mind is the social pressure as a medium for humor. If we go back to the resistance example, right? Mm-hmm. This is any time that you can call someone out, or anytime that you have like kind of like a moment with somebody, or even like situations where one person is being like bullied. I know that sounds bad, but it can be really funny. Mm-hmm. Or just seeing like, if we go back to Seas of Strife, right? Just continuously failing and it being almost surreal. Like these situations, they're not necessarily an emergent property of the game being funny as much as like the social interaction that was allowed to happen. Mm-hmm. I think those are some of the funniest moments in games.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think one moment that always comes to my mind is, I don't know if you remember the phone app Heads Up with like Ellen DeGeneres.
Right, yeah.
If you're listening to this right now and you're like, oh my God, I forgot about that app, like you should just play it again because it's still fucking, it works.
Still good, yeah.
And it's just reverse charades. It's like pretty simple conceptually, but like it is really funny to be like the person with the thing on your head, and then like people are doing some sort of charades in front of you, and you're like, oh my God, like, you know, like and especially if you're like not getting it and everyone feels like they're being very obvious or like there's only one thing they could do, they just keep repeating it. Like, I feel like that's always a good time.
What was the one that we talked about recently where you have to like answer 2 questions at the same time? Stay cool. Stay cool is a similar thing where you have somebody asking you like a really simple question, like what year were you born? And then they just like can't answer and everybody's like laughing because it's
just like, bro, just tell us. Yeah.
I think those situations are funny because they allow us to experience like pathos while also kind of enjoying the suffering of another person. There's definitely a level of Schadenfreude. This is a word that's been coming up pretty.
I was about to say this might be becoming your like new favorite word or something. Like you say Schadenfreude about as much as I say daybreak. Is what I was about to say.
There you go. You found a way to sneak it in there, Tom.
Boom! We got there. New game alert. Daybreak. Matt Leacock, you did it again.
As mean-spirited as it is, it's definitely something that rustles my jimmies in a positive way. Is that a good use of the term? I feel like
I don't know anymore. It's like chuggy as hell probably to say rustles my jimmies at all.
I've now found like 5 different ways to say makes me laugh without saying makes me laugh. I feel like that like the hipster at the record store that's like, yeah, this project was like really interesting to me. This work, I really like this record, this wax. Like you just can't say album because if you say album, you're like a poser or whatever.
Or like the way Fantano is always saying cut when he's talking about a track.
Yeah, this cut.
Like,
yeah. I'm gonna say laugh, made me laugh, and joke. There we go. I don't know why I'm dancing around this right now.
The need to be like ironic at all moments, you know? I mean, like I get caught by it too all the time.
Yeah. Oh my God. They saw me laugh.
I don't call it sex. I call it boinging bangles. You know, it's just like whatever gets the conversation to happen without having to be honest.
This particular boing, I'll give a light 7 out of 10. Transition. Other types of funny. So I like when games have enough of a sandbox that they can create emergent scenarios that work within the constraints of their systems while also being almost absurd or nonsensical.
Can you explain that in English, nerd?
Yeah, so Shut Up and Sit Down had a really good example of this. They talked about Agricola as one of their like favorite games, and they said Agricola is funny.
Those mad lads.
It's not because the game itself is like, you know, oh, go to the poop zone, you know, none shall pass into your farm. It's because you can do things like go, oh no, I didn't make enough food. Well, off you go into the oven, my animals. Those situations, sure, they're morbid, right? They're non-ideal, but there's a certain humor to this idea that you can, like, there's just a card that says oven. You can convert animal into food. Wow, I sound like a real sociopath in this episode.
Well, yeah, but it's just like, it's like the process becomes so abstracted that like actually imagining the details creates like some kind of humor out of it. Or it's almost like you with like Njostfjord, where you're just like,
exactly, yeah,
it's like these are just like old men in a pit getting fed fish or whatever you described it as. I still haven't played it.
And when they eat 3 fish, they poop out a 4th fish. Yep.
Yeah, the abstraction of the actual story that your game is telling can sort of become funny because it's abstracted and you can sort of retell the story in a different way.
People always point out the fact that in Agricola you can like have a kid and immediately put him to work. Like that's another thing.
Exactly.
It's like, and I don't think Uwe is like oblivious to this. I think he very consciously allows for a little bit of fun in that aspect of like, these games are meant to be a simulation of this idea, but only at a very superficial level. And that's what allows you to create these funny situations. Like, I think I agree with Shut Up and Sit Down. I think Agricola is a very funny game, despite how Euro-y it looks. And I don't say that about like every worker placement that simulates a certain thing. Like, I think that in particular, like Uwe's games are pretty good at this. The fact that you can just go nuts on Coke in Le Havre. And then there's somebody that's like the master of coke. It kind of reminds me of the king of piss thing in Sidereal as well.
It's funny that you're bringing up the coke in Le Havre because like that's almost something that drives me nuts about every time I introduce the game. Just like, yes, it's coke, haha. Like, you know, like, and it's not because people shouldn't think it's funny, but just because I've heard it so many times. It's like the way
you're like exhausted.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the way
the Bart meme.
Say the line, Bart. Yeah.
Yes, it's coke.
It's like, yeah, we're cooking coke. Jesse, I need to go to the cokery, Jesse.
It's funny because we've just glazed like emergent humor and social humor and talked about how like referential humor is mid, but all we do on this podcast is referential humor. So
yeah.
we're like the munchkin of podcasts.
I think, you know, we've gone on the record but times before by informing people that like they could listen to something else and probably should, right? Like
yeah. And if this is their first time hearing it, like what's the checklist? Like, you don't have to play games, burn your collection, don't listen
sell
to
all your games,
plenty,
stop listening, go back to like the lifestyle you had before you got sucked into this. Okay, it was better then.
If you're like, they don't know what they're talking about, it's not a fluke. It's not like maybe you're not understanding something. We don't know what we're talking about. So just wanted to reaffirm that notion as well.
I love the guy that you've just created for us, like the listener of our podcast who goes like, oh man, like I just wish I could understand what it is that they're saying, but like there must be some hidden meaning because like it seems too obvious that they would just be stupid. Like they have listenership, they have Patreon subscribers. There must be something more that I'm not getting. Like
they're 50 episodes in, they're like, I think it's gonna get good now.
They're like, maybe if I donate at the highest tier, I'll start and maybe it'll all make sense. Like
if you've been listening for 50 episodes and it's still not really like you're not laughing, it's probably because you haven't gotten the Patreon content. The Patreon content really is the glue that makes it all. It's all the parts Kenny edits out because you get the access to the unedited episodes, and then like exactly. that's where all the jokes wins. Kenny killed them. Oh, Tom went on a tangent here. It was like, stay on topic, brother. It like drops it all on the floor. Okay, but now you're mixing in truth, though.
And that's what I'm saying. You know, they lost all the times I ever cooked on this show. All right, round us out here.
Yeah, I think I think games can be funny. The end.
Moral of the story, as always, the letters to Celestia to send off every episode. Games can be funny.
I don't think the games that try to be funny are typically the ones that are funny. The games that give you the tools to be funny are the ones that are funnier.
Games are funny when they are funny, but don't try to make it funny or else it won't be funny.
No, I mean, you say it as a bit, but that's true. Yes, exactly. If you're a designer and you're like, I want to make my game funnier, don't put jokes in it. Okay, that's not how you make the game funny. It's by giving people the resources to make jokes. If you're making a party game, that means giving them enough agency so that they are able to inject that humor while also not feeling the pressure of just it being complete improv. A good example is like monikers. And if you're making like a Euro and you want it to be funnier, just make sure that there's enough there for people to express themselves. And even if they're not being funny, they're probably going to still have a certain level of enjoyment by having that ability to manipulate things, right? If it's too on rails or it's too focused on optimizing points, then you don't create those funny moments. So.
Well, I just want to be clear to anybody who is a designer and is listening to Kenny's instructions right here. If you did these things, you'll get glazed, to the sun and back by podcasts like ours. You probably won't sell a single copy, though. I'm just kidding. Because when you look at like the capital success of Cards Against Humanity, right. What do you meme and all that shit? It's like clearly that's just the way to go if you want to make money. But if you want to be respected by hipsters, do all the things Kenny just said. And you can even do it like with referential humor. I was just thinking of like Anomia in this instance. Like part of the
Anomia is a good example.
Comedy of that game is failing to recall, and it's that pressure of being put on the spot and like, you know, trying to still blurt something out, right? It's when you put the right kind of combination of social pressures together, it just is going to make everyone laugh, right? That's what you want.
Yep.
Okay, well, I think we've covered just about everything we are willing to cover at this. Tell us what you thought we missed. Leave a comment, leave a joke. We'll read your jokes next week if you leave a good enough one. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you especially to Michael, Tyler, Devon, and Josh of the Boise RainBeaus for your sweet segue music. And thank you to Bonehouse for letting us use your song Rot as our opening theme.
If you're loving the cast, share it with a friend or on Reddit or on BGG. You can also reach out to us directly at shelfstablecast@gmail.com. All this and more available in the show notes. Tom, what are we feeling next week? You got inspiration?
All right, Kenny, next week, I think it's time we finally admit that Kickstarter might kind of be okay sometimes. We've already complained about Kickstarter. Time to glaze Kickstarter. That's going to be the difference. Next week's episode. See you then.
Bye.